record. Okay, so I don't know how many of you were on the last talk, but I talked about how I was able to trace my Jewish roots and find my tribe. I was actually not born Jewish, and was always interested in it for no particular reason. I just was. And then I met my husband and I started making him take me to services because I wanted to go. And I just felt very comfortable and I loved it. So fast forward many years later, I took a DNA test and turned out I had Jewish DNA. So I picked the line that I thought would be most likely, which was my New Mexico line. And I started researching the crypto Jews of New Mexico. Took it back and just kept working my way back until I found that original family name was Halevi, and they were converted to crypto Jews when the Inquisition came through. And they went to New Mexico to get away from the Inquisition, which had then gotten to New Spain, which is Mexico. So the original name was Halevi. So not only did I find my Jewish roots, I found my tribe. I'm a Levi. And that was very cool. So that's what I talked about at the last one. So this time, what I want to do is I want to just give you some information on how to get started looking for your own family roots and starting a tree or whatever you want to do. So I'm going to share my screen. So you'll see my screen and you'll see my PowerPoint presentation. And then if you have questions, just I may not see your faces because I've got both my screens going with the presentation, but just yell out the question and I'll try to answer it. And I was also going to leave some time at the end for some questions. So I'm going to share the screen and go to the right screen here.
Can I ask a question first?
Sure.
Maybe you may not want to answer this, but Shirley, how did you feel about Carrie researching her roots and finding this out?
She's the one that got me started.
Oh, okay. So are the roots root? Did you know you had Jewish roots?
No, I didn't. I was very excited when we discovered this together, kind of. It's given a whole new dimension to our research.
Had you been doing research before?
Yes, but I didn't realize there was a New Mexico connection.
Oh.
And when we got into the New Mexico connection, that's when we found the Jewish roots. And wow. It just got more exciting after that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mom started doing the genealogy when she retired, and my sister and I were just kind of like, well, Mom's got a hobby, you know, keep her busy. And so we went with her one time to visit one of the cousins that she met online, and we didn't want her going by herself to meet with her, so we went with her, and the two of us were like two cats at a tennis match. We were just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So we were hooked at that point. And so we've been working as a team ever since. And we do make a really good team. We each have our strong points, our jobs. I'm the hunter-gatherer. I travel, I collect vast quantities of documents and travel around the country. And I throw them into the Dropbox and then I let them know. And Mom is the vetter. She's the one that goes through and makes sure it's the right guy, the right place, right time, right connections, right papers, whatever. And my sister is the big picture storyteller. She looks at all of the different things that we have and said, well, they lost a child from this census to this census. They had family here. I think he went to live with his family. X marks the spot. And then I go and I look. And it's just a kind of a cycle. And she's spooky good at it too. She comes up with some stuff that just like, why would you think that? We've quit asking that because.
So she's the detective. She's kind of she's the picky one.
Well, she's kind of like, she just looks at all the facts and figures out what the next step should be, you know, where something might be or where somebody might have gone or what would have happened in the family. It gives us the reason to go and look for the documents or the artifacts or whatever we're looking for.
Okay, that's cool.
So, yeah, and she's very good at it. So we're all very good at our jobs. So I'm going to get started. This is how to build your own family tree. So first thing you want to do is choose a platform. There's several different platforms that you can use. I looked at the prices for these. They do fluctuate. So this is just kind of a general idea. Ancestry is the most popular site. It's the one that I use the most. Somebody's got some noise in the background. Maybe if you're not talking, you can just mute yourselves. Because there's some
That
kind
would
of
be
noise in
great.
the background.
Let everybody mute.
Yeah, everybody. mute yourself.
You can mute everybody, can't you, Carrie?
I can. Oh, and Jeannie just entered the waiting room, so I admitted her. So Jeannie, you find me there? I hope she's there. I don't know how to mute people. Let me see here. Well, everybody just mute yourselves, because that way you can unmute yourself if you have a question.
Okay.
But then we won't have the background noise, because I'm very distractible. I get distracted easily. Anyway, Ancestry is the one that most people use. It's the one you've seen the commercials for. It's very popular. It's a little more expensive than some of the others, which are mostly free. And there's 3 different levels mainly to Ancestry. So the lowest level that you can get in is the United States documents and part of, everything in the United States. If you don't have anybody outside the United States, that's probably the most economical way to go. And then there's the World Traveler, which covers other countries, documents and records in other countries. And the highest tier is the World Traveler, but it also includes newspapers.com and Fold 3, which I will get into later, which are also wonderful resources. So I have the third one because I use everything. Family Search is free. However, the thing that I don't like about it is it's a shared tree. It's like they call it the world tree. Everybody works on the same tree. And so people can come in and change the tree, which is extremely annoying. Hi, Jeannie. She made it.
Yeah, finally. Hi.
That's Beth and Jeannie. So I don't like doing my research and then putting something on a tree and then having somebody who thinks they know better come along and change it. That just, I don't like that. So
Not good.
not good. So on some of these sites, I have what I call a bait tree, which means I'll go and I'll start a tree with just a few basic people, because it's kind of like a trap for hints, because you can go and you can check it and did it catch anything? Because these programs will go out and look for things that may be documents related to your people. And you can go and you can look and you say, no, it's not mine, or yeah, cool, and you can take it. So I'll just build little trees on each of them. They're free. And then I go check the trap every now and then, see if I caught anything cool. My Heritage is another one. It's from free to $2.99 a year, depending on what you want, how much of how large a tree you need. You get up to a certain amount of people for certain prices. But they do have some really cool tools. They've got the one that, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but you can animate a photograph.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
actually pretty cool. Some people find it very creepy, but I think it's really cool. You can take a static photograph and you can run it through this tool and it'll blink and smile. And it's really quite, and also it has a really good tool for cleaning up pictures and for colorizing them that work really well. So I've been using that on some of my photographs lately, which is pretty cool. Find My Past is free. It's good for if you're researching ancestors that are in the British Isles. It's kind of limited. And Family Tree Maker is not an online thing. It's actually a software you can put on your computer. And it goes for between $80 and $100 for the software, and it syncs with Ancestry. It may sync with the others, I don't know, but it syncs with Ancestry. So that way I have my tree on my computer also. So if anything happens to Ancestry or I lose my subscription or something, I have all my trees on my computer. And I can go and I can work on them on my computer and then log into Ancestry and it automatically syncs up. So it's a great program. So,
Terry, can I ask you one question?
sure.
I don't see on your list here 23andMe.
That is not an Ancestry program. That's a DNA program.
Got it.
So these are just the platforms. So you want to kind of pick one that you're going to work with, because once you start building your tree, you don't want to try and move over to another one because you'll have to start over. So these are your
Carrie, I have a question.
Sure.
I had Family Tree Maker up and running really hot and heavy as of about 2005. And then when I finally had a chance to retire and get back into this, of course, 2005 doesn't talk with 2020 or 21.
Yeah.
And I've heard there's some bridge programs that actually can make it work. And then when I tried to find Family Tree Maker just to go new and improved and try to upload the files and such, it seemed like, okay, Family Tree Maker had been bought by Ancestry and then kind of just fell flat.
I can't really tell you what to do. You'd have to contact them because I just started using it last year. So
Okay.
you might want to contact them and just tell them your problem and see if they have a workaround for you.
Okay, we will talk on the side. All right.
Okay, we will. We do.
Yeah.
Okay, then after you pick your platform, you want to start with what you know. Interview any relatives now because they're not getting any younger. And one of the biggest regrets of people that do genealogy is, dang, I knew my great grandmother and I never asked her any questions. Or, you know, Aunt Bertha could have told us everything about the family if we'd only thought to ask her. You know, that sort of thing. We all have those regrets. So if you want to interview your relatives, ask them to tell you stories. Where did they grow up? You know, who were their relatives? Who were their grandparents? That kind of thing. Gather that information, and the main information that you want to get full names, date and places of birth for your parents, your grandparents, spouses, children, anybody. Date and places of marriages, date and places of deaths, and location of burial. That's your basic, what we call the BMD, which is the birth, marriage, death documents. And then you start by entering that information. You start with your own. You start with one leaf on the tree, and that's you. You put your information in. Then you add your parents and put as much as you know about your parents as far as their birth dates, where they were born, if they're no longer with us, you know, when they died, that kind of thing. Enter your grandparents' information. Just work back with whatever you've got.
Carrie,
Yeah.
can I enter something from what you're saying and add something to it? Is when you say interview your relatives now. My mother, God bless her, lived until she was 95, but I had started doing some family research, and what I started to do is she lived in a different city, and I wanted to keep track of her also. So I told her I was going to interview her online. She used the computer. I was going to interview her and send her one question every day. And I wanted her to answer me. And she, like me, I guess, does not give simple answers. And she wrote paragraphs. And then she got into it and changed the colors and changed the script and changed the fonts and wrote.
Good for her.
Just, I'd say a question like, what did you eat for lunch when you were in elementary school? I mean, just really basic kind of questions, but then she would, knowing her, she would embellish it. And I saved all of those
Good.
original emails because it was so interesting seeing how she changed it. And then
Those
she would
are
say,
golden.
and you know what, if you have children or grandchildren, it's really interesting to have them start working on that now. I mean, I'm the older generation now.
Yes.
So, you know, if I could get my kids to start doing it, I think
That's good information. Bob's mother actually wrote several letters where she wrote out about different people in the family, and I've used that information to build his tree, which I'll get into, but his tree, nobody knew anything beyond his parents and his grandparents. They came from Poland. He's second generation American. Plus you got the Holocaust and everything, and that was really awful. But I was actually able to take it back about 5 generations in Poland.
wow.
And
Yeah.
so
Well, my mother told family secrets. I mean, I left those in because those people have died.
when I got tired of having too many hints on my tree, because I've got probably 150,000 hints I haven't even looked at on my ancestry tree.
Oh my gosh.
Every one of my lines has been here forever.
Mhm.
If I went there and I got a leaf, I was so excited. It was ridiculous. So it happens. So anyway, you can also enter information for any great grandparents, aunts, uncles, anybody else that you have that you want to add in. So that's what you start with. That gets you started. Then you move on to beginning your search. And this is the fun part. You want to focus on what are known as primary BMD source documents. That's the birth, marriage, death. I'm going to teach you some of the lingo here too. BMD documents are birth, marriage, death, which are primary source documents. Primary source is something that is the original document for that thing. Like, it's not like something printed in a book where somebody says that somebody was born on a certain date. It's a birth certificate or a marriage certificate or a death certificate. It could be family records, like a Bible that they wrote the births and deaths in. It could be all kinds of different family documents. Most of them you're going to be able to find at the county vital records office for the county wherever they were born, married, or died. My sister and I have spent a lot of time at vital records offices all over California, getting marriage and birth and death certificates for everybody about 5 or 6 generations back already. I have a huge stack of these things, but those are your vital records. But even those you have to kind of look at and check, especially death certificates. Birth certificates, usually the people filling them out are the people involved, the parents, they know when they're born, that sort of thing. Marriage, it's filled out by the people getting married. Death certificates are usually filled out by whoever's giving the information. They may not know. So we've seen some really messed up death certificates.
Oh, yeah.
Mom knows this, and we've got one of, what is it, great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother, where they put, instead of her mother, they put her mother-in-law. And now that started some weird rumors in the family. But it's just the person, whoever's giving the information, if they don't really know, sometimes they fake it. And they'll write, oh, his father's name was such and such. It's like, no, it wasn't, or how old they were even.
Do you have to pay for those if you're online?
Yes.
Or if you're what if you're in person?
Yes, they're not very expensive. They're usually between $20 and $30. There's a place online that you can get them called Vital Check, where it's you pay a little bit of a fee to use Vital Check, but it's really super simple. Because you go in and say, I want a marriage certificate, here's the names, here's where they were, here's the date. And you pay for it online, and then they take care of going to the county and getting it and mailing it to you and that kind of thing. But you can also just go down to the county offices and order them. I mean, Lisa and I walk into county offices and go, here's a list of the people we want certificates for. They'll look them up, and we'll go have a cup of coffee and come back, and there they are. Most places will do that. Some of them will mail them to you, but a lot of them you can just walk out with the documents in your hand. So the other online, it takes a little bit longer, but if you want them right away, and you have the access, like in California, we were lucky because we'd go on what we call a genealogy road trip, and we'd go hit a couple of counties and go to the county office and just get our documents, get in the car and go to the next one. And we'd come home with lots of good stuff.
Can you find some of that in the Mormon library? Do they have that?
Yeah, I'll get to those.
Okay.
Also at the end, I'm going to put a link in the chat. I put in a Dropbox, I put a PDF of my slides, and I put 3 documents in there of different resources that are available, and one that has links for all these different kinds of places so you can go look. And then one of them I got from somebody else. It looks like it's got links, but it's been flattened, so you can kind of just play with it, but it's not real links. But so you get your primary source raw documents. Okay, then there's secondary source documents, which are also absolutely perfect. I mean, really good for what you're looking for. But these, you want to try and get at least 2 to verify what you found, because a lot of these may not be accurate. But this is what you're looking for. There's census records, newspapers, city directories, voter registrations, immigration records. So you can read all these. But it's amazing how many documents and resources are actually out there.
Yeah.
And they go way back. So there's just no end to what you can find out there. So these are some of the examples I'm going to show you of some of these documents. So census records are really great. The 1900 census is the best because it has, each of them ask for different information. Some of them are like the older ones, which are known as the enumerated ones, just ask, or they use tick marks to say how many males and females in the family in this age group. And it really doesn't tell you a whole lot. The 1900 asks for occupation, where you were born, your immigration status, what year you came here, what year you were married, all kinds of really good stuff. This is a sample from the 1870 census of Independence, Arkansas. This is for my two-time great-grandmother, Ruth Elizabeth Garner Ross. And this is a blow up of it. She's married to, this is when she was a child. She was 9. This is in 1870. She's living with her stepfather, Jerry Jones, her father having died in the Civil War. And Lucinda Bell was her mother. And these are her siblings. And then the 1880 census, 10 years later, here she is, she's married now. I'm gonna blow this up. She's married now. Ruthie Elizabeth, she's married to Joseph Ross. And another thing with census records that you want to do is you want to look on the page before, the page after, and everywhere else on the page you find. See where these red dots are? This is Enoch Bell, who is her uncle. And this is another cousin here, James Bell, I think actually brother. And down here, the Yanceys are also related to her. So you can find a lot of family. Back a long time ago, they used to live in little clumps, and where you would find one family member, you could usually find more on the census record. So that's just a little tip to try and find them.
Best friends used to stay together too.
Yeah. So one thing that has been kind of a bad thing for us is there's no 1890 census, much to the disappointment of all of us genealogists, because it's a pretty vital census, but it was destroyed in a fire. So there are no 1890 census. There's a couple of little ones that survived, but there's really basically none. But the good news is, as of April 1st, the 1950 census will be out.
Yay!
So the whole genealogy world is excited for that.
So excited.
Just so excited. Okay. So then county vital records, where you can find, these are what the certificate looks like that you would get. This happens to be the death certificate for my 3-time great-grandmother. Now the terminology 3-time means great-great-great-grandmother. We get tired of saying the word great. So 3-time great-grandmother is great-great-great. She died on the 4th of May, 1906 in San Luis Obispo. This is her death certificate. And you can see it has lots of information on it. She's married. She was born in New Mexico in Taos. And this is her father, Thomas Herrera, and her mother's maiden name. She was one of the Martins. So Martin and Herrera are 2 of my New Mexico family lines. She's one of the ones in my Jewish line, actually. So I think she was in my last talk also.
And Carrie, she was born in Taos.
Yes, I know. We were just talking about that yesterday. I didn't know we had anybody in Taos. There she is. And also in vital records, you can go to the office of the vital records. And if they have the old books, you can look through the books. I love these places that have books. This happened to be Butte County.
Thomas!
And yeah, this is Jeannie's line here. So
Thomas Langley Barnes.
Thomas Langley Barnes. Yeah, there's our connection. So my sister and I, that happens to be her finger there, went up and we were looking through the books. We were looking for the Barnes up in Butte County. They were a big family that lived up there. They had a big ranch. And then in one census, they're all at the ranch. The next census, 10 years later, they're all scattered and doing menial jobs, and they didn't have the ranch anymore. So we went up there to try and find out what happened to the ranch. We found out what happened to the ranch. It was foreclosed on. They wouldn't leave. So the sheriff actually came up and threw them off, and then they sold the ranch. So they lost the ranch. But we were looking through the death records up there. So this is my 2-time great uncle, Thomas Langley Barnes. And this is actually, Jeannie, this is the other Thomas Langley Barnes.
Right. Is this the one that got shot in the groin?
Yes, I was getting to that. Okay.
Okay.
So we're looking through
We
this.
have like 4 Thomas Langley Barnes.
Yeah,
just to
they
be clear.
had a penchant for naming everybody the same darn name. Okay. We have a lot of Michael's Barnes also. Anyway, we're looking through this and we go across, and this is the page, the left-hand page. We go across to the right-hand page. This shows Thomas Langley Barnes. He was 44. He was a male. He was married. He was born in California. Then we go over to the other side of the book and we see this.
Oh yeah, knife wound. Yeah.
What he died from. And we thought, oh, there must be a story there.
Oh, is there ever a story?
So we decided that we were going to find the story. So that's where my next source, which is newspaper articles, come in handy.
Mhm.
So we were able to find lots of different articles about how Thomas Langley died. Got into a fight in a bar with a guy stabbed him with a pocket knife and just happened to cut the artery in his leg, and he bled out and died.
Yeah,
I like how it says almost instantly killed.
Yeah, almost.
but you gotta have time to bleed out.
You do. So, we find stuff like that and it leads to other stuff, which is pretty exciting. So I love the newspaper articles because you usually get a lot more information than you do from just the documents that have, here's when they were born, here's where they were born, here's when they died. The newspaper articles, especially the older ones, because they didn't have movies and TV and Netflix and stuff back then. So this was a form of entertainment. So they made them very dramatic a lot of times. So you would get a lot of information, and a lot of times the articles are just hysterical the way they write them. But you can find out pretty much anything you want to find out. And the newspaper articles go way, way, way back. You can get stuff written up in the 1600s.
Mhm.
So I find lots of articles about people. So this one happens to be, these are my great grandparents. This one is my grandmother, the young girl here. That's my grandmother and her brother Lloyd. This is my grandma Ione and her parents, Naomi and Lee Knight. Lee is actually, my middle name is Lee. I'm named after him. So they lived in Santa Margarita, which is the little town over there. And when you live in a small town, everything gets put in the newspaper, which as a genealogist, I just love. So I've got hundreds of articles about him because he was the constable in Santa Margarita for many years. And so there's articles about him getting into fight with the county supervisor that he didn't agree with. They got in a big fight, knocked each other senseless, wound up both of them in the hospital. And then nobody pressed any charges because they figured they took care of it. I don't know. That's how you settled political arguments back then, I guess.
Mhm.
But you can find, this is his obituary. This is the one in the middle is an article about every year he and Naomi had a party for his birthday and their anniversary. And the articles would usually cover what color scheme they used, what presents they got, who was at the party. This is one of the smaller ones.
Big deal.
It's a big deal. And Lloyd Knight, see, that's my uncle. And so all these people were at the party. So you can get a lot of information from these articles. And then a lot of interesting stuff, like he complained because he didn't have a deputy. So he deputized Naomi. And she became the deputy, and she even arrested that draft dodger. So I have the articles about how she arrested a draft dodger, but this is the article about how he hired his wife as deputy. And down here, Chairman Claude Arnold on Brazil's Points could aid Knight by getting him the deputy. He's the one that he got in the fight with, that they both wound up in the hospital. So you could put together almost every aspect of a relative's life with some of these newspaper articles. So they're my favorite thing to find. So another good source are city directories, which we don't really have anymore. It's kind of the precursor to the Yellow Pages.
Yeah.
But back then, everybody was in the directories, and it would give you a really good idea of where they were living. And you could find out really good information. Here is, they spelled the name wrong, but Meyer David Zeidman is Bob's grandfather. And he was a butcher, and this was the address of his shop. And these are his grandparents, Meyer David Zeidman, who I think is absolutely gorgeous, and Jenny Jacobs, whose original name was Shendels Jacobowitz.
But look at her necklace. Is that a cross or is that?
No, it would not be a cross.
Design.
She was very strict kosher Jewish. It's some kind of a design. I don't know what I wish I knew. It'd be great.
It is beautiful.
Mhm.
But look at that dress. I mean, it's just, but he just, I don't know. When I first, my mother-in-law gave me this portrait. It's actually a couple feet high. It's a big picture. And I just couldn't stop staring at it because he's just dreamy. but designs on my husband's grandfather. Anyway, this is from the 1917 Philadelphia City Directory, and it gives you a lot of really good information because you know where his shop was, what his occupation was. So those are really helpful to have. This is what they look like here. They have all the different names, and so everybody under the same name, there would be, all these people have the same last name, Harry, Zibman, and whatever. So those are really handy.
Now, did you add the red dots?
Yeah, I added the red dots just to show where
Okay,
I get this. You can go blind trying to find a name on these things.
yeah.
So I try to stick the little dots in there when I save them so that I can find it quickly when I need it. So another good source are military records. And the military records go way back. This is actually the military records, that the documents in the back, the two pages, it's actually a multi-page document, is the pension file for my 6-time great-grandfather, Elijah King Knight, when he fought in the Revolutionary War. And the Pension Act of 1818 allowed people to file for a pension.
Did you take a shower?
If they fought in the war, they could come in and they could give their testimony of where they fought and who they fought under and which battles they were in and when they were wounded and if they were held prisoner. And he was in all the major battles. He was wounded at the Battle of White Marsh. He was held prisoner by the British in Philadelphia, and then he was traded. It's all in the pension documents, which is just an awesome record to find. And then this down here is his muster roll from June of 1780. It says Elijah Knight on guard duty. So he was also at Valley Forge with George Washington. And his first cousin, Jonathan, who would be my first cousin, Jonathan, was George Washington's private surgeon.
Huh.
So the family.
Can I butt in here?
Sure.
Just when you're doing something like this, be careful. There were lots of Elijah Knights. So you have to have some way of verifying that it was your Elijah Knight.
I have found them. I used his number. He had a serial number, I guess you'd call it. And I think I found 3 basic Elijah Knights, and I found the serial number for each one. So I usually check to see what the serial number is so I know if it's the right guy or not.
I didn't mean you. I meant that was the general you.
The royal you. Okay. Good advice. Good advice. Yeah. I'm going to get to some of the pitfalls at the end, and that's one of them, is a lot of people with the same names and even more in common. Sometimes it's spooky what people will have. You'll find somebody you think this has got to be them. And it's weird, but more military records, a little more recent. This is the World War I draft card for my great-grandfather, Thomas Joseph Norris. And this is what these look like. And you can get some good information off these too, because it has their address. This one, not so much, because his handwriting was atrocious.
The date of birth is just wonderful to have on this.
Yes. So he was born on 2nd of August, 1882. You've got his address here, if you can make it out. It talks about what his occupation is, who his employer is. He happens to be self-employed, but a lot of them will have the company they worked for, a permanent address, who's your next nearest relative, who happens to be Carrie Norris, who I was actually named after. This is my great-grandmother on my dad's side. So that's where I got my name. Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yep, that's where I got my name.
Woo.
And it gives a description of him. He was tall, slender, blue eyes, and gray hair. And he didn't have any obvious scars or just marks or anything. And this is a picture of the 2 of them. This is Thomas, and as we called him Papa and Big Mama.
Do you know what city that photo was taken in?
Probably somewhere in Southern California. Mom, would you know?
Not sure. It could be San Bernardino.
Okay. 'Cause I'm looking at the houses and they look so much like the same photos that I have that are more in the Salinas area.
I don't think so.
And that's where a lot of the barns were at one point.
Yeah, these are the Norrises. This is on my dad's side of the family.
Right.
They were in Arkansas when they were all younger, but I think this is after they got to California.
Mary, it said he
cool.
was 36 at the time,
He was, yes, 36.
and it said he had gray hair.
Yeah, that's what it said.
They aged quickly.
The times
Well-
were tough back then.
Yeah.
People had to register for the draft, even if they were pretty old.
Yeah, they called it the old man's draft, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Old man's draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everybody had to. So, and then there's voter registrations, which are really great for residency, verifying residency, because they had to register every year. So you would see these lists. This happens to be the register from Tehama County in California for the 1875. And here we are in Barnes again, Jeannie. This is my
I think I have the same one.
This is my two-time great-grandfather, Michael N. Barnes. And shows he's 33, born in Illinois. He's a barkeeper. This is after they lost the ranch, obviously.
Obviously.
He lived in North Red Bluff. And you can get it was registered by assessor on June 25th, 1884. So that tells me that that's where he lived, in Red Bluff in 1875. So that gives me a good timeline. So it's a really good way of tracking your relatives. And once you have that timeline, that is really handy for when you're finding other documents, because you'll find, oh, here's this great document where grandpa lived in Maine in 1870. And then you go and look at your timeline and go, no, he registered to vote in California in 1870. He couldn't have lived in both places. So obviously something's not right. So it's a good timeline to keep track of where they were at any given time. So immigration records, I love immigration records.
Mm.
My family, I don't have any immigration records because everybody has been here since God created the earth.
Yeah,
So,
forever.
forever, or before they had immigration, one or the other. So, most of my people came in, and, the English all came here in 1620 on the Mayflower, or 1635 on the James and
Mhm.
coast, and then worked their way across the country, or they came up through New Mexico, New Spain and New Mexico, the Kingdom of New Mexico, and then that became part of the United States. And then they worked their way over to California. So those are the two main ways that my family came in. So there weren't any immigration documents in my family. So these are from my husband's side of the family. So this is Bob's grandmother, Annie Lerner Malik. And this is not a typical immigration. The typical immigration form is a lot longer. It's got a lot of information about their family, what ship they came on, the date they came on, who their family back in the old country was, all those kinds of things. But I particularly like this one because it's one of the rare ones that had a picture on it and her signature, which is pretty cool to find because you don't see that very often.
No, you don't.
But this is a certificate of naturalization when she became a citizen of the United States. This is her, a younger picture of her.
Oh,
These are Bob's grandparents on his mom's side, Sam and Annie Malik.
an interesting thing about that, they made one copy with the picture on it, and all succeeding copies didn't have the picture, and they gave the person the opportunity to take that one with the picture on it if they wanted to.
Really?
hmm.
Because
But-
this is actually from family records that I found in Bob's mother's stuff. So it was the one she was handed. Yeah, most of the people in Bob's family have no idea who anybody is beyond his grandparents, which is really frustrating. I could give you my lineage on one foot going back 12 generations. But so it really astounds me when people don't even know their grandparents, but it happens a lot, especially in Jewish families. But his mother, when she moved, we helped her clean out her storage shed, and she had this big box of light bulbs and she didn't need them. So she said, well, if you want to take them, so okay, we'll use them. So we took them home, we put them in the garage, and every time we needed a light bulb, we went out, we got a light bulb. After about 10 light bulbs or so, I pulled it out and I saw there were papers underneath the light bulbs.
Mm.
Yeah, I picked it up and there was the ketubah of his great grandparents. There was this immigration document that was like, oh my God, I was in heaven. And if I'd known, I would have been out there much sooner. But this was in that cache of documents. So another really interesting document that you can find, and I actually downloaded every one of these for all the 3 banks that have them, are these, what they call the ship passage records. Somebody would usually come from the old country, come to America by themselves or with 1 or 2 of the kids, work for a while, and then buy a ticket for the next group to come. And then they would buy the ticket, the next group would come over on the next ship, or sometimes a couple of years later. And that's what they did here. So what I found was that when Annie came over, she was actually an orphan. She was 16 years old. I have not been able to find what happened to her parents, but she came over. And so what happened was, you can look in these bank documents, and the first line here, it was on the ship was the K. Louise. This is the blow up here. On 6/25/1914, Annie Lerner, 16, from Sokolots. I do not speak Polish, so I will totally butcher these. Novoshica is where she lived. So this gives me information about where she lived. This is that she came from Bremen, and she's going to Philadelphia. And the ticket was paid for by Morris Weinstein, who is a cousin of hers, and Sam Stein, who I've not figured out who Sam Stein is, but they have addresses for them here, which gives you information that you can then take and pull up a census record and find out who the family was, and then who else was in the family, and how long did she stay there, and that sort of thing. One big mystery that I have with her is I also have the ship register that shows her when she came across on the ship. And there's traveling with a man named Oren Lerner, who came from the same area as her. No idea who this guy is. He's one of my mysteries that's driving me crazy. I've looked him up under every name I could possibly think of, Saul, Aaron, anything. I cannot find him. And I think he must be a cousin. But he was traveling with her, and he was 19 at the time. She was 16. So you find these information which lead you to different lines. And so there's no end to any of this. So if you think you're going to get into this and it's going to end at some point, forget about it, because it goes forever. Anyway, so the immigration documents are really great information about people. So then in just about any family, you're going to have the bad guys. No exception. I love actually finding the bad guys, because their stories are quite interesting. We had lots of, banditos and people who were on the other side of the law. This happened to be one that I find particularly interesting. This is my 2-time great uncle, Thomas Lee Llewellyn, and Llewellyn is my Welsh line. He was born 1871, died in 1921. This is from the San Quentin Mug Book. So this is another document you can get. Not all prisons have them, but San Quentin happens to be one that does. They've published their mug books. So you can go in, and the picture at the top is how he looked at intake when they brought him in, and then they shave everything off of them. And that's how they look when they're finished with intake. And he was in there. He was inmate number 23259 in Kern County. He was in there for murder in the 2nd degree. He got 20 years. He was received in December 27th of 08. So I guess they let him stay out for Christmas or something. And he was discharged April 27th, 1921. So he was there for 13 years. And then you go back to your newspapers and you find the newspaper article about what happened. So he murdered this guy, and there's a whole story about it. I have several different newspaper articles, because you can usually find all the articles, and if it's a big case, there'll be lots of articles about it, and you can follow the case through all the articles, which is kind of cool.
He died the same year that he was let out?
No, he died in 1921. He got out in 1908. No, he was convicted in 1908. He died.
Yeah, and it said he got out in 21 and he died in 21.
Let's see here. Click on the right thing.
Mhm.
Oh, he did die. Yeah, I guess he died. Maybe he was discharged because he was dead.
Good eye. Good eye.
Like, we got to get him out of here. He's starting to smell.
We need to check him out of here.
That's a good point. I never thought about that. Yeah, maybe he died in prison.
Yeah.
Interesting. Good catch. See, you're getting.
So you have more research to do.
You're getting in the mood. So
Uh-huh.
then just to, kids like to
No.
follow their father. Here's his son, Thomas Nick Llewellyn,
Oh
born in
my,
1901, died in 1968, from his San Quentin mug book. He was also convicted of murder in 1931. He was known as the tickler because he made this weird comment about how, if you look at the article here,
oh my.
he said he told the officers he tickled his wife to death with a knife. That's how he got his nickname. So he was convicted of killing his wife with a knife, Mary Smith Llewellyn, in a jealous rage. So he pleaded guilty, didn't even try to hide it. So that was the bad guy. That was one of the bad branches.
He was a short guy. Look at that, 5 and 1.5 inches. 5 feet.
Yeah, he was a little guy. But anyway, they were an interesting branch. So other places you can find documents are hospital and asylum records. I know we have somebody on the tree who died in an asylum up in, I think it was Agnew in California. Might have been Sonoma. There's a bunch of different asylums up there you can find the records for. But when I was putting this together, for the life of me, I could not remember who it was. So I just went to the records for the Mendocino State Hospital and just picked one. So this is not related to me, but it's an example of a record that you can find. This is for how a man happens to be named Thomas Rial, who died 31st January 1935. And he was admitted to the asylum up in Mendocino. And he died of a cerebral hemorrhage and apoplexy. And it talks about how they ask about alcohol. Let me turn on my laser pointer here. I forgot I had this, except I can't do laser pointer, and that's annoying. Okay, never mind. If you look on the left-hand side, about halfway down, you'll see where it asks about alcohol. It says yes, intemperate, which means he drank. Tobacco, narcotics, epilepsy, no. Head injury, no. But the cause was the sudden death of his brother over 2 years ago. And it says, has lost all ambition and does not work. Thinks he meets his dead mother on the streets, restless at night, sees visiting and hears voices. Thinks he is charged with electricity. Friends consider him dangerous to be at large. So they admitted him, says he's ill-nourished. His mental state is dull, hesitating in replies to questioning, coherent and incoherent by turn. Anyway, also diagnosis was dementia. And then this is where he lived. So you can find, some interesting information. Sometimes most of the time, actually, these are very sad things to find. You'll see some that are where women are put in there by their husbands to get them out of the way. Sometimes they'll be after they've had a child, which would more than likely be a postpartum depression situation. They would put them in the asylum. But there are times where men just stuck them in there and then went and remarried. It was kind of a convenient way of getting rid of an inconvenient wife. But you can find a lot of interesting information in those. So those are interesting. But other records are church and mission records. I found some really interesting things. These are Quaker records from the Duck Creek Quaker meeting in Randolph, North Carolina. These are the records from 1826 to 1870 for my Llewellyn family, the same family as the two guys in San Quentin. These are the good ones, though. These are Quakers. See if I can get this to stop being.
I laugh because my husband has a plethora of Quakers.
There's lots of Quakers.
And many are still there today.
Well, this is, so my 5-time great-grandparents are Meshach Llewellyn and Jane Brookshire, who were both born in 1787 and 89. Their son Henry is my 4-time great-grandfather, and their son Henderson, he went on to be known as the father of the Pacific Northwest fruit industry. He's one of my favorite characters on the tree. He actually packed wagons full of 600 fruit tree saplings and brought them by ox cart over from Indiana, from Iowa, over the Rockies, over the Sierras, and he brought in all of the fruit trees that you see in California, Oregon, and Washington. The Washington apple, the green cherry, the apricot, the plum, the pear, everything are from his fruit trees. So the area around Oakland called Fruitvale was his ranch. And just real quick, I have lots of articles on him too, but he actually went a little nuts, started a cult, sold his ranch, bankrupting his family. His wife divorced him. He and two of his sons got on the ship with his cult and went to Honduras to start a new community. Did not work out too well. There were a couple of really bad incidences on the way. One of my favorites was they were all starving because one of the things in this cult was to just eat this one grain, and they were all starving to death because of it. So they got to this island somewhere between Oakland and Honduras, and they went on shore, and Henderson was having some kind of a difference with his first in command over who was actually in command of the ship. So Henderson finds this man selling eggs, and he says, how much for the eggs? The guy tells him, he pays him. He says, okay, I need to go get my wagon and I'll come back with it. While he's gone, number 2 comes over and says, how much for the eggs? The guy tells him, he pays him. The guy has now been paid twice, so he beats the path out of there. Henderson comes back with the wagon. The 2 of them get in a fight. They wind up breaking all the eggs. They paid for it twice and they never got to eat them. Anyway, it never worked out in Honduras. He came back and bought a little plot of land in what is now downtown San Jose. And he and his son-in-law were clearing the property. And the son-in-law went back to the house for lunch. Henderson didn't show up, so he went down and checked him, and he had a heart attack and fallen into the fire. And we're hoping he was dead before he hit the fire, but that was the end of Uncle Henderson. But the cool thing was, back in Iowa and Indiana, Henry and Henderson were both major stops on the Underground Railroad. They both had built houses that had all kinds of hiding places in them. And there are actually articles about slave catchers and masters coming up there and demanding there, because the whole community were Quaker abolitionists. There was a major split in the Quakers at the time. Everybody was pacifist, but one side thought they should just stay out of it. One side thought they should be more proactive, and he was in the proactive group. So they were actually hiding slaves, and then this whole little community, people would come up there and demand their slaves back, and these guys would come out with their shotguns and run them off, and they would get into these big fights a lot of times. But Henderson's house has been preserved as the Llewellyn Quaker Museum in Salem, Iowa, which is really cool. I have yet to see it, but I want to go see it. But
Sounds like a pilgrimage to me.
I think we need to go.
We shall.
So this is Henderson. This is what he looked like. But the records, so this is the Quakers, God bless their soul, were the best record keepers on earth. They wrote down everything. These are the Llewellyn families. These are the birth dates. These are the names of the parents. It has Meshach and Jane at the top. These are their kids. All these ones that say Meshach and Jane, and then ditto. D-O means ditto. This Harrison Llewellyn, where his parents were Meshach and Margaret, that's his second wife. So there's just, this whole page are just Llewellyn people. So they have the greatest records. They're just amazing. So then also with my family, the mission records were very, very
true. Yeah.
useful, because a lot of my people came up with they came up with De Anza, they came up with Father Sarah, they were involved in the missions. They were mostly soldiers who defended the missions. And so their births and deaths and marriages are all in mission records. This happens to be from records from the Mission Santa Clara from 14th of June, 1808. It's the marriage record for my 4-time great-grandparents, Sebastian Rodriguez and Maria Perfecta de la Luz Pacheco. Matter of fact, Sebastian Rodriguez is the one, his Spanish land grant was what is now the Watsonville area where my mom lives in California, which is between Santa Cruz and Monterey. He owned that whole 5,500 acres from the mountain to the sea. And that was he had several land grants, but that was one of them, the Bosa del Pajaro land grant. So my mom lives actually, I believe it's across the line in the Salsa Puedes land grant, right? You're not actually in Sebastian's property.
No, the land grant that I live on is the next one over from his,
Was it
but he
Salsa
did
Puedes?
own the whole Pajaro Valley.
Yeah. So there's a whole story there too. We have all kinds of records. And as a matter of fact, Beth, who's on here, my cousin, She descends from Sebastian's brother Alejandro, who is the one who fought with my grandfather over who owned the land. And just a quick synopsis of it, he kept taking Sebastian to court saying that he owned part of the property, and the court kept saying, no, you don't. And finally, one judge decided that he was entitled to part of the property, and that was Judge John Watson, who then bought the property from Alejandro and then sold it to developers who built a city on the property. Sebastian appealed it and won, but he died right before the verdict came down. The kids came back to the property, saw there was a city on the property at that point, so they came up with the family motto, which is, what can you do? And so Bev and I have buried the hatchet after all these generations because she is a descendant of Alejandro, but we love her anyway. But this right here is in Spanish, of course, is the marriage record for the two of them. And that is from 1808 at the Santa Clara Mission. So the mission records are awesome. There's a lot of mission records. Okay, so some of the other places you can find records. Local historical societies are great. There's a lot of them. Almost every community has a local historical society, and they collect records of people that have lived in the area for any time. So if your family is from a particular area, if you contact the historical society there, it's usually a reciprocal relationship because they may have info for you, but they would also love to have whatever you have. They'll take photographs, they'll take artifacts, and that kind of thing. So they really are very happy to hear from you, and they're usually very happy to help you out also.
Carrie,
Yeah.
I just want to add to that. When I was doing some research, my family came in and a lot of my family stayed in New York. And so I tried to find a lot of New York information, which is a tremendous amount of information. But someone told me that if I even went to there's an Italian, this was in a list of Italian weddings, and I don't know what it is. It's some Italian website in New York that has it doesn't matter. They have Jewish information as well. And I found a lot of information from that just because of New York. So don't just limit your search.
No, it's amazing what's out there. So some of the ones that I work with, because I love, my favorite part of this is I love doing the research. I love having a goal and just digging until I find what I'm looking for. So I work with a lot of historical societies because not only can I get information from them, but I also do research for them. So a lot of times if they have a question, like when was this building built, or, what happened with this school or whatever, I can research and find the answer and then give them the articles or the documents or whatever. So these are just some of the ones I work with. The Santa Margarita Historical Society, I work with a lot. And one of the good benefits at Santa Margarita is we have a friend there. His name is Henry Barba. And October 19th, he turned 108.
Yeah.
And he is amazing. He grew up with my grandparents. So, I mean, how many 61-year-olds do you know that can have somebody firsthand knowledge that hung out in your great grandparents' house when they were kids? I mean, he's amazing. So he works with the Historical Society there. The Santa Cruz Museum of Art and History has a lot of archives, and so I worked with them to find stuff on my Rodriguez family line because that's where they were. The New England Historic Genealogical Society in Boston is like Mecca for genealogists. It's 7 floors of books and documents and artifacts, and I've been there twice, and I've spent a week each time. And I just go in and try to find as much as I can possibly find and just take pictures of it. And there's just so much more to find. And they have artifacts that they can bring up from the basement. You can look in their index and order them, and they'll bring them up for you. I sat there and I had a letter of introduction that was written by my 6-time great-grandfather, introducing somebody to somebody else. And I got to sit there with it in my hand that he wrote like 200 years ago. And it's a real experience to be able to hold something in your hand that was written or handled or created by somebody that you're connected to. It's just kind of it's just something you have to experience.
Yeah.
I do a little bit of work for the Waterford Historical Society, which is a town in California where I lived when I was in high school. Simsbury Historical Society, I worked with a little bit, finding my Knight family line because that's where they were all from. The Llewellyn Quaker Museum, I haven't worked with them, but they are a place that I want to go. That's the one I was talking about, was Henderson's house. The History Center of San Luis Obispo, which is in what used to be the library where my mother used to go when she was a little girl and read books, is now the History Center. So I always think of that when I'm there and I'm down in that basement going through records. I think of my mom sitting there as a little girl reading books. And another big one for me is the New Mexico Genealogical Society. They publish books full of records of all of the founding families of New Mexico, which I'm related to just about all of them. Literally, I mean, New Mexico is a really interesting place to do research because there was all these families that came up in 1598 with Oñate and started the Kingdom of New Mexico, and they all intermarried with each other. And so they never really left. It's kind of very isolated. Even now, you go there and all the names of lawyers on signs and billboards and company names or whatever are all the same names. They're all Martin Serrano and Luján and Lucero and all the names that we're researching. And we work together online and at the Genealogy Society to all help each other find documents and stuff. And so there's a lot of research has been done on those families. So as an example, this is what I found at the Archives of New Mexico. I found thousands of pages of this, but this is just an example of the Santa Cruz de la Cañada is a church that's just north of Santa Cruz in the Española area that was built by my ancestors. And I got to go there and walk around. It was built in 1710, I think. It was early 1700s, I think 1710, because these are baptisms. This is a list of, this is transcribed, so it's much easier to read than the old Spanish records, like that marriage record I showed you. This page happens to be, a lot of the Herreras, my Herrera family, like the picture of my great-great-grandmother that I showed you, the ones from New Mexico. These are her family. They came here from New Mexico in about 1840. So there's all these things where you have the date they were baptized, their father's name, their mother's names, their padrinos, which are like the godparents, which are usually either a close friend or relative. So that gives you information also. So these are, we even have their sometimes their siblings' names, different things. So those are really amazing records to find. So these are from 3 different archives because it was Spanish first, then it was Mexican, and then it was territorial archives after it became part of the United States. So that's the other thing is you have to know when you're looking for places, things change hands. California was Spanish, Mexican, and then American. So it might be the same place, but it might be a different nationality. So another thing is books are amazing. These are a couple of my books. This is a book on the Martin Serrano family, which is one of my lines. And it has all the different generations of the Martin Serranos from the first ones that got there and all their kids. And then it covers all their kids' kids and then all their next generation. And you can go through it and just track your family. And it has all this really great information about every one of the Martin Serranos. So you can go through it.
Jeannie's got hers.
Huh?
Jeannie's got hers.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Jeannie's got hers.
Yeah, this is my husband's family, the Sayre family. Go this direction, I'm sorry. His 7th great-grandfather was one of the 8 Puritan families that founded Southampton, Long Island. Yeah, Hampton. Hello there. Anyway, Long Island. One of the first first Anglo Puritans that founded Long Island. And it's just insane how this is what they have.
Yep. So you can find books. I have them on the Martin Serrano family. I have the Lucero family. I think I've got a couple of them over there, but you can find them. The Martyr, I just finished reading. No, I read a different one, but about the same thing. This is amazing. Luis de Carvajal they were a family in what's now Mexico. Well, I guess it was Mexico at the time, that were crypto Jews who were, they were prosecuted for being Jewish. And first time that they were prosecuted and found guilty, they were made to wear what's called the San Benito, which was the robes with the yellow robe with the big red cross on it. They had a dunce hat. And they had to wear that, and they were, anytime they were outside for 5 years. And then once they got through that, then they were turned over to the police again. Somebody else accused them of being Jews. And Luis, who was the head of the family, finally decided he had enough, and he said, screw it, I'm Jewish, kill me, do whatever you want, but I'm going to die as a Jew. And unfortunately, the entire family went with him. So they were all burned at the stake in Mexico City. But the other branch of the Carvajals went to New Mexico is the ones that I'm descended from, but they're all related. But you can find books online. If you go to Google Books, I love Google Books because you can find digital books on anything, and you can find all these digital books on your family that include people in your family, especially like ours with the New England branch. There's all these books about the founders of New England, founding families. They're written up in tons of books, and you can get the digital version, which is nice because then you can search in them. You can crop out text from it and put it into your tree, into notes or whatever you want. So that's an amazing resource, Google Books, and you can save them also to your file. You can have a file in there. So I have my own library of Google Books that has all my books about the Knight family and the whoever. The library, most of the larger libraries have a great genealogy section. If you go in and look, they'll have books on genealogy from all the different states and different countries, and you can find all kinds of stuff. It varies. Some don't have any, and some have awesome libraries. The LDS reading rooms are in a lot of towns. You can go there, and they'll actually help you find records online. The Family History Center Library in Salt Lake City, which is at the temple in Salt Lake City, which is great. The DAR Library, the Daughters of the American Revolution Library in Washington, D.C. has awesome stuff. Us DAR ladies, woot woot. National Archives of Washington, D.C. has some amazing stuff also. Bancroft Library in UC Berkeley. Mom, this is the one where I got Sebastian's diaries, not the Huntington. It's Bancroft that's at UC. It's at UC Berkeley. The Huntington Library is actually in San Marino, California, down in Los Angeles. One thing I would recommend before going to any places, especially like the National Archives, the DAR Library, the Salt Lake City Library, even the Bancroft, figure out who you want to look for and write down, focus. I've walked into these places and go, just give me anything that's related to my family. And they'll kind of look at you like, where do you want to start? You wind up spinning your wheels because you just start looking for stuff. And by the end of the 3 days you have to look there, you're finally focusing, but you could do so much better if you know what you're looking for and you just go in and focus. So that's my word of advice on that. But these places have amazing documents that you can get into.
Carrie,
Yeah.
you might mention that this Huntington Library has a I guess you call it transliteration of the old mission papers like you showed a while ago. All the old mission documents have been digitized and they're online at the Huntington Library.
Which is
Wow.
really great. Mom and I went
Translated.
down to the Santa Barbara mission, which is where they have all the mission records are now consolidated in Santa Barbara. And she and I got to go into the room where they have them, and they're these gigantic books. And they're just big leather-bound books that you feel like you've been miniaturized, because these books are about 3 feet by 2 feet, and they're like 6 or 8 inches thick. And
Mhm.
big tomes, you open them up, kaboosh, and you have these pages of all handwritten on there. They're amazing.
In
But
Spanish.
having them translated, translated, but also transcribed. That's the word I'm thinking.
That's right.
Really makes your research a lot easier. We would have to go through them and find the names and read them in Spanish, and not only Spanish, but Old Spanish. So which is like Old English.
But the people at the mission in Santa Barbara are very helpful. They will help you. They find things for you and open up the books for you so you can see what you want to see.
I have found that the people in those libraries and all, I don't know about those libraries, but the ones that I've been at in Utah are more than happy to help you.
Yeah, they're usually very helpful.
And
Very.
even some really, I told Carrie this, there was a relative that we couldn't find that had abandoned his family, and I said, he probably died in Kansas City and he's Jewish. And she says, oh, we have a book
Always a book.
about people who are buried in this Jewish cemetery in Kansas City. And sure enough, that's how we found him. And it's like, and
Yeah.
found other relatives with him. So you never know what you're going to come up with.
Most of us that are involved in genealogy are crazy.
Yeah, we are.
You know, the reason I even started my genealogy research business was because my husband says, every time you hear a story, you run to your computer and start looking things up, you may as well get paid for it. So I wind up doing it anyway. But I mean, on one of the places I love to go is I'm on several groups on Facebook. I don't know if you guys know about Facebook groups, but there's a group for everything, multiple groups for everything. So there's all kinds of genealogy groups out there for different countries or different people or different nationalities or whatever. But you can find all these groups you can join. And most of them, if I get stuck sometimes, I'll throw a question out onto the groups. Like, I'm trying to find this particular thing. You'll have 400 people that are all crazy genealogists trying to find that information for you. And they'll start asking you questions and they'll start throwing documents out there. And sometimes in 5 minutes, I'll have the answer that I've been looking for a year. They're amazing.
Carrie,
So, yeah.
I hope that people who tuned in are probably interested in somehow in genealogy. And my hope is that they are interested in trying to start their own, or just don't even know where to start without somebody just sitting down with them.
Well, that's what we're gonna do with the special interest group. I'm hoping to
That's
do
what I want
that.
to ask you, how we can start, if you want to
We can talk about that offline and get that started and let everybody
send
know.
I think maybe send an email to the people who have signed up, and you and I can talk about a date.
Yeah, we'll do
and
that.
Set a date, and we'll send an email, probably not until after the first of the year because it's crazy
Yeah.
at the end of the year, but we can send out information before that. If you guys are interested, well, we have your list. We will send the information out to all of you. And I hope to be able to get together in person for those people in town, so we can kind of bring our iPads,
We'll do that.
laptop, and we can sit with each other and you can say, kind of get some of this people on a quick start to get them interested.
Yeah,
I would love to do that.
I'm happy to do that. That's what I've been.
And I'll do that with you.
Okay,
And we
we'll
can
do it.
set it up as a SIG. Does that sound okay, Judy?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a date.
And if somebody can't come, then we can Zoom with them. So,
Okay.
unless you have something else, and if anybody has something they want to share with everybody.
Well, first, let me kind of get through these because I've got a few more
Sorry,
slides.
I'm so
That's
sorry.
okay. I know we're already running over time, so hopefully everybody's having a good time here. Okay, good. I was hoping that. So
Nobody cares.
nobody cares. If you have to go because I know I'm running over.
Well, that's why I
but-
just wanted to get that information in before.
Yeah, no, we're definitely going to do that. That's the plan.
Okay.
So another thing this is what I was talking to my mother about at the Bancroft Library at the UC campus. This happens to be one thing that I found there. This is the diary that was written by my 4-time great-grandfather, Sebastian, the one that owned the property in Watsonville. He was a soldier at the time, and it was written while he was out trying to retrieve horses that were stolen by the Indians in the Central Valley in the Tulare area of California. He went out twice between April and June of 1828. And he wrote every night. He would write in his diary. So there's his name here, Sebastian Rodriguez. I can't do that.
Now, is he part of the Jewish background people?
Um,
I'm only asking because I understand that sometimes the names that end in
No.
Z.
I don't think he was. I'd
No,
have
I
to
don't think
through
so.
the line. No,
Okay.
it was the Herreras and the Garcias. So what's really cool is he writes about this, and the stuff that he wrote is really interesting. He wrote about one time where he came and he found a tribe of Indians, and he was also supposed to be bringing back the Indians who had run away from the mission, besides trying to find the horses that were stolen. The Indians would steal the horses from the ranches and eat them. And he was supposed to go out and bring the horses back and also the Indians that were running away. And he told the guys, the Indians that he found, he said, you know, we need to, the ones that need to go back to the mission, he called them the, what do you call them? I knew this a few minutes ago. Anyway, there was a name for the Indians who had been baptized. And he said, I'm supposed to take them back. And they said, oh, no, they're not here. They're not here. And he said, well, I know they're here. So what he did is he took the entire tribe hostage and until they showed up. So he wound up like babysitting this whole tribe of Indians for a couple of days before the other Indians finally came back, and he took them back to the mission. But he wrote every night about what he did that day. And it's so interesting. This is my 4-time great-grandfather's handwriting, writing out what he was doing that day in his own words. And it gives you, when you read it, you can get his voice, you know, which is so cool for me. And then at the bottom, which is not a very good one, I have a better copy, but is a signature, which is a really cool thing because that's something that's so personal to a person. And so this, I mean, this was back in, you know, 1828. And this is somebody who I'm directly related to. So it's just so cool to hear his voice and to hear what he was doing. So another thing, not so much in my family, but well, some of mine are in Spanish, but in Bob's family, there's a lot of foreign records because everybody was in Poland. So I have a couple of resources for finding records in Poland that I've used, and I was able to get these documents, which are Polish records. I actually have a cousin of Bob's, like one of my distant cousins, who lives in Israel but was born in Poland. She speaks Polish. I sent these to her to translate, and they're not Polish, they're actually Russian, because at the time the Russians owned Poland and everything was written in Russian. But these records are, the smaller one on the left is the birth of Bob's grandfather, Meyer David Zeidman, 28th of December, 1886. The one in the middle is the marriage of his great-grandparents, Jacob Zeidman and Chaya Rivka Rosenberg, on 26th May, 1872 in Kromolov, Poland. And then the last one in the back is the death of Jacob Zeidman. And if you notice the spelling, that's the Polish spelling of Zeidman, which I think we should go back to because nobody can spell my name anyway. So they may as well really cool spelling, which I think Z-A-J-D is actually pretty cool. But these are documents that are very beautiful handwriting if you know how to read Russian or Polish. But I can go through and find the name Zeidman in there so I know they're right. But this group that I work with at an organization called Shestikovo-Radomska Area Research Group, which most of the people here are going to have ancestors in that area of Poland, the Jews anyway. So this is going to be a really handy group for them. They actually will, the guy that runs it, you can write to him and tell him your family names, and he'll send you a report of anybody in the records that have those names, and you can track the family that way. And if you find records, his are all transcribed, which is something you do if you're part of the group. If you have time, there's no obligation to it, but I've done it for them many times. They'll have documents, they'll have a cache of documents, and they give them to a lot of us that are members to transcribe, and that way they get transcribed really quickly. And you don't have to know Polish. Some of them you do, but a lot of them you just have to write what you see and put it into an Excel spreadsheet. But there'll be a link if they have the actual document somewhere, like in the archives at Katowice or somewhere, which is where I found these. And he walked me through getting them. He wrote out an email in Polish telling him what I needed, gave it to me to send to the archives to order the documents. And then he has a guy in Poland who, if you PayPal him $10, he goes and he gets the documents and he mails them to you. So it was like for $10, I got these documents from the Katowice archives that are Bob's family in Poland. So that was really, really cool find. So one of my favorite things to find are photographs. I love finding the photographs. And there's all kinds of ways you can get them. Oh yeah, Jeannie and I just found one recently when we were working together.
Oh my God, yeah.
Both of our 2-time great grandfathers, and it was a picture of 4 brothers, and her guy and my guy were brothers. And it was the first time we had seen their faces. So it was a moment. So what you need to do is collect up your family photos and write all the information on the back. And I'm talking use full names, dates, and places. I can't tell you how many pictures we have that have the most useless captions on them, if they have them at all. Grandma is not helpful to future generations. We have one, Mom and I have been trying to place it. It says Grandma and Grandpa on it. It's like, which Grandma and Grandpa? My favorite, I found one of my other cousins that I met online. She had posted some photographs of my family, and I was just so excited. I was up all night grabbing these pictures, and I contacted her. I said, "Where did you get these photographs?" She said, "Oh, I've got a box of them in my house." I'm like, "Oh my God." So I said, "Well, are they digitized?" And she said, "No." And so I came down and she let me. I went down and I took a photograph of I took 867 photographs and worked for 11 hours digitizing all these photographs. But they are the most amazing photographs. And one of them has my favorite caption on the back. It says, "Some relative on either mom or dad's side." That wins the prize for the most useless caption ever. But she had all these pictures. The picture up in the upper left of the older woman with the flowered robe, that's hanging on her wall. It's a big portrait. That is my 4-time great grandmother. She's like the oldest picture I have. And the one down at the bottom is my 2-time great aunts. And I believe the one in the white dress is my great grandmother, my mom's grandmother. Grandma Linda. And that one happens to be a tintype. In the bottom of this box were little stacks of manila envelopes about this big, all rubber banded together, full of tintypes that were about an inch tall. And I was able to photograph them and blow them up. And that was one of the tintypes in there. And then the one on the left, I just love this photograph. One, because it's just a beautiful photograph, but two, because when I looked at it, my first thought was, oh my God, she looks like me.
That's what I thought, Carrie. I think she looks like you.
She does. She's one of my 2-time great aunts. But
Without question.
yeah, so I love that picture, but also just the pink touches and it's so elegant and beautiful. I love that picture. But anyway, right on the back, any information, pretend that you're sending it to somebody who does not know your family, and put all the information you can on there. Even where it was is also helpful. And then scan all your pictures and share them with your family members so that there's multiple copies out there. Because one of the worst things that can happen is, God forbid, your house burns down and all the family photos go with it and nobody has any copies.
I've got all of my photos up in the cloud, and all of the family members, except Carrie, has the link to them, so that hopefully they'll live forever if I die tomorrow.
Carrie, when you say to digitize them, you just took your cell phone and took a picture of these photographs?
You can do it that way. I actually am a photographer, so I took my camera equipment and my little pop-up studio, and I went down there. When in hindsight, a scanner would have been much easier.
I scanned everything.
It would have been much easier. I took my equipment down and I was so sore the next day, mostly in the hips, because I was standing over the top of the photograph for 11 hours, except for a dinner break. And all the weight was in my hips. By the next day, I could hardly walk. But
scanner would have been slides. I have a lot of slides. How do you do slides?
Very easily. There's a contraption for the scanners. You just put them in there and scan them away.
Exactly. Just look it up. You can find one. But scan everything you have. And then when you go online, while you're building your tree, you're going to meet cousins. And cousins, hi. And cousins are more than happy to sit down and spend 5 hours over a cup of coffee comparing notes and pictures, and share your photos with them. They share their photos with you, and so everybody expands that way. I actually started a cousins group. I got tired of trying to remember who was which line, and I'd find some document and go, oh, this would be great. Bev will love this. And then I'd remember, no, she's on this other line. I started a Facebook page. It's a private Facebook page. People have to apply to join, and they have to tell me who their family is. It's called California History Cousins. And I can post stuff on there and all the cousins are a part of it and we can share stuff and we can set up, reunions and get together. And we had a little mini reunion a couple of years ago, and Bev would remember this, in Santa Cruz. And we were sitting at a table in the library in Santa Cruz, and we're all talking to each other and on our computers. And we were talking about family names, of course, are bouncing around. And somebody walked over, and Bev is an Amaya. And somebody walked over and said, "Did I hear you talking about the Amaya family?" And we're like, "Yes, she's an Amaya." "Oh, I'm an Amaya." So they sat down and started looking up, how they're connected. Not 2 minutes later, somebody walked over and said, "I heard you talking about the Rodriguez family. I'm a Rodriguez." I was like, "Oh, that would be me. Sit down and we'll figure out how we're connected." I mean, you can't swing a cat in Santa Cruz without hitting a Rodriguez. And so we picked up 2 new cousins just sitting at the table. It might even been 3. I don't remember. Do you remember, Bev? Bev's not there. I don't. Yeah, that is
She went
because-
Carrie,
yeah.
I'm gonna toddle off to bed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you
Good
very
night,
much.
Shirley.
Good night, Jeannie. Nice to meet
Nice
you.
having you,
Great to
Shirley.
meet you too.
And bye, Bev.
I guess she's
Oh,
muted
she's
or
gone,
she's
huh?
on. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Carrie.
All
Very
right.
good.
Good night,
Very
Mom.
good.
Love you.
Love you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So there's only a couple more slides and then we can talk about questions. One of the things I was going to say here with photographs, there are books, I have several of them that help with dating photographs. So a lot of times you don't have any captions, you don't know what time period it was. I have a photograph that has a name on it, but I have 2 of them, a father and an uncle. I mean, a nephew and an uncle. And I was trying to figure out which one was which on it. And these books will help you by looking at the clothing styles, the hairstyles, the type of photograph it is. Is it a daguerreotype? Is it a tintype? Is it, whatever is it? So all those things will help you date it. And then once you date it, you can usually figure out who it is, because they were like 20 years apart. So we were able to do that and figure out which one was the uncle and which one was the nephew. Also photographer marks, a lot of photographs, old time photographs, you'll see, Jacob Flowy Photography, Santa Cruz, California, and you can look them up. And a lot of photography studios had a limited time that they were in business. They may have only been in business for 3 or 4 years, 5 years maybe. So that gives you an idea of a time period of when that picture was taken. So there's all these clues to figuring out who's in a photograph, when it was taken and where it was taken. So those are really helpful things. So these are just a list of, like I said, I'm going to put, in fact, why don't I do that now? I'm going to put the link to the Dropbox in the chat box here, because you guys are going to want this stuff. Chat box, let me find the chat box here. How come I can't get to the chat box?
Is it because you're the host?
I don't know, maybe.
Oh, here, chat.
Yeah, it's supposed to be at the bottom of my screen. But I want to give you this link because I put all this stuff that I'm about to tell you about in the Dropbox. Why can I not? Can't get to this. Once I'll turn it back over to you when we're done, and I'll stick it in this. I think we may have lost a few people, but
Okay.
once I turn it back over to you, then I'll put it in the
Or
chat.
you know what? We can send it out when we send out the email.
Yeah, either way. Well, we can do both.
Okay.
But let me make this small again so I can you guys out
Yeah,
of the way.
because we're leave. Some people have to leave.
Yeah, so I'm almost done. There's like 2 slides left. So these are just some online resources. I put them on the list that I'm going to give you. Yad Vashem, you guys know about Yad Vashem. It's in Israel. They have a lot of Holocaust records. Fold 3 is great for military records. They have military records for every branch and every conflict all the way
Is
back.
that
to
through Ancestry though?
You can do it separately. I have the Ancestry account that includes Fold 3. But you can go to Fold 3 by itself and get a subscription to Fold 3 by itself. But they have everything, from the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korea. You can look it up. And there will be documents in there, muster rolls and pension papers and, medal awards and anything. And you can also create a profile for a member if you want to. You can build a profile for, say your father and put in all of his information. So there are profiles for people too. So it's a great site for that.
Yeah, I need to start doing that.
Yeah, I haven't really, I did it for a few people. So Ancestry, which you guys know about, the New England Genealogical Historical Society, which I put in wrong, it's actually History Genealogical Society. Anyway, that is the Mecca. Shestakova-Radomska Area Research Group, which is krarg.org. That's the one I was telling you about. Facebook groups, I told you about those. Jewish Gen is also another great one for Jewish records. You can look up all their databases. You can look up the towns that people were in. You can look up information on different places and people. Newspapers.com and genealogybank.com are the two newspaper sources. I have them both. I find some are better for some areas. There's a lot of overlap, but some, one will have papers that the other doesn't have, and they're always adding new papers. So you always go back and check again. So you think you've found everything. You can put somebody's name in, you can put a date in, you can put a place in, you can filter out, put in filters and parameters and find articles on, if there's an article, you can find it. And if you don't find something, come back a week or two later and try it again. And they may have just, they're constantly digitizing new papers. The We Are Cousins, this one, I don't know, you may not be as interested, but We Are Cousins of the Las Villas del Norte is for Mexican ancestry. So a lot of my Mexican records will be there. They do a lot of seminars, which is really nice. They do publications. Find a Grave and Billion Graves are really good because they're databases of cemeteries. And it's also a participation thing. I can go to a cemetery and take pictures of the headstones, and I can upload them. There are also people on there that you can go there and you can transcribe headstones. So you go on there and you can find the grave for your ancestor in some place, wherever it is. And it'll have, some of them will have biographies on there. There'll be pictures on there. Just depends on how much has been put in by the different people that run it. I go out, when I'm going out to a cemetery, I take pictures of everybody in that row, or if I'm not in a hurry, I'll take pictures of lots of headstones and upload them. If I'm sitting at my desk and I have nothing better to do, I'll jump on there and transcribe some of them. But also one thing that they have that is really nice is that you can request a picture, like your grandfather was buried in this cemetery. You can request a picture of that, and somebody who lives near that cemetery, you can sign up to be one of these people. I've also done this for people in my area. They'll go down to the cemetery and take the picture and upload it for you.
Yeah.
So it's really nice. So I don't have to go to Philadelphia to get a picture of Bob's great grandfather's grave. Somebody will go that lives down the street will go take a picture and upload it for me, and then I have it.
We've done that for cemeteries in Texas and New Jersey when we're in those general areas. We'll spend at least a week going to cemeteries fulfilling photo requests.
Yes, your Dead People's Tour.
Oh, yeah. I should have had you post a photo of our t-shirts, but my sister she made us t-shirts to wear on our cemetery jauntings. And it says Harry and Jeannie's Tombstone Tour. We come from a long line of dead people.
Everybody, we all have our tagline. My sister and I, when we jaunt around the country, it's like, we annoy dead relatives all over the state.
I like that one.
Our line, annoying dead relatives all over the state. So these are mostly the online resources. Offline resources, a lot of these also have online databases, but these are places that you would most likely get better. Sometimes you can do a combination. A lot of times I'll go to their website first and look through their index and write down index numbers and things that I want, so that when I get there, I don't have to spend time looking that information up. I can just say, here's the index numbers for all the things that I want to see. Please go pull these for me. Or I know to go to this section. But the LDS library in Salt Lake City, again, the DAR library, the Jewish Genealogy Society of Southern Nevada is one that's local. They haven't been doing too much. They've had a couple of seminars online, but they usually meet at the library in Summerlin over in Charleston. And they have speakers from all these different groups. They have some really good speakers, or at least they did before the pandemic. The New England Genealogy Society in Boston, Local records offices are great. You go to the county vital records office and you can, some places you go and you have to fill out a form and they go look for it and they mail them to you. Places like San Luis Obispo, Santa Margarita, you go in, they bring you the books and you can go through the big books like we were showing you with the guy that was, knifed in the groin and stuff. And you can go through the actual written documents, which are just awesome. Local courthouses, like my great grandfather was involved in a court case over his ranch. And I was able to go and find the court documents that told what happened. Because it was always in the family, oh, well, they killed grandpa with their court case when they did this and they did that. I was able to pull the records and go, okay, here's what really happened in that. And which is really cool. The Mormon reading rooms, the Huntington Library, Bancroft Library. So here is pitfalls and best practices. These are some of the things I've told you already, but some of the things you want to do is always verify your information before adding it, preferably with 2 or more sources, because you'd be really amazed at how many things sound like, oh, that's got to be my guy. One example, my great-grandparents, the ones I showed you, Big Mama and Papa, they lived in Arkansas. It's Joseph Norris and Carrie Norris, and they had all these kids with certain names. There's another Joseph and Carrie Norris in the same town. Some of their kids have the same names. They're almost identical age. The only thing that I can use to tell which one is which is the other Carrie and Joseph are Black. So when I find a record, I have to look and see, are they white or are they Black? And it's just a coincidence that they all happen to have the same names and live in the same town. So you have to be really careful that, because if you put bogus information in your tree, it's going to lead you, that branch is going to grow and it's not going to be, you're going to have to
Be true.
the whole branch. So it really screws things up. And then also if you're doing it on Ancestry, people will find your posting and if it's wrong, and then they just grab it and put it on their tree and it grows. And pretty soon there's this bogus information out there. And I try not to add any bogus information to the onslaught of bogus information that's already out there. Be aware that not all source documents are accurate. Like I was talking about with the death certificates are written by somebody who may not know. Census records, sometimes the person who's giving the information, isn't right. There's a lot of times where women moved and said they were widows, but actually they were still married and their husband was living in the other next town over, but they didn't want to
Or
talk
divorced.
yeah, divorce was a bad thing. So they'd say they're widows. And it's like, okay, so he must have died between these two and these two. And then you find, oh, there he is, living live and well. And you have to kind of get a couple of different sources, preferably to do it. Now, what I try to do is know the difference between a hint and a fact. A hint is something you may read it in a book and say, oh, he came to, Philadelphia from New York in 1822 and brought all 12 kids with him. That's a hint. It's not a fact. If you find a census record that shows that he lived in New York and he had 12 kids and here was their name, that would be a fact. So sometimes if you get bogus information, I have to sit down and untangle it, and I will actually draw out a line down piece of paper and I'll write hints and facts and I'll write whatever I find. And then once it's verified, I move it over to the fact file. And that way I can untangle people, because I've had to do that a few times, because people will take information and, oh, that's a fact. No, that was a hint that this might be true or this might be the case, but until you verify it, it's not. So no,
Carrie,
yeah.
you and I talked briefly when we were sitting here doing something at my dining room table. The 1840 and prior to census, sometimes it really helps to kind of map it out. So they had a kid that was 0 to 5 and 5 to 10 and 10 to 20, male, female, yada, yada, yada.
Enumerated censuses, yeah.
Sometimes you just have to map that census out. And there is someone out there, thankfully, because I'm a spreadsheet queen, that has put all of the censuses from 1790 to 1940 in spreadsheet format, so that it's much easier to do it on your computer rather than to print it and try to write it out and such. And then I have it saved.
I've done that myself with about 20 different censuses from places that I look, like especially the small Santa Margarita, Santa Cruz. I copied all that information and put it into spreadsheets. So I forgot I was supposed to send you
this. I mean, it was like $12.95 to buy all of these pre-done census forms.
They're labor intensive, so that's a good price.
Yeah, so I need to send that to you, but that does
Okay.
exist, and I will get that to you because it saved
Okay, we'll talk
ton
about
of
it.
work for me. Yeah.
So the day format that's used by everybody is the day, the 3 letters of the month, and the year. This is really important. People who use the 8/9/24, if you're from Europe, or the person who wrote it might have been from Europe, it could be August 9th or it could be 8th of September. You just don't know. So this way it's always clear. It's the 8th of December, 2021. So try to use those. Try to remember, people a lot of times have multiple names. They'll go by their middle name, or they'll change their last name, or they'll have a nickname. People will have multiple names a lot of times. Beware of generational names, like with our Michael Barneses and our Thomas Langleys. Our Michael Barnes, we always stick their birth year on it. So we'll have like Michael Barnes, 1782, Michael Barnes, da, 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 da. And that way we can keep track of them because there's so many of them. I told you before, check previous and succeeding census pages for family and other houses nearby. And the big thing, don't be lazy. There's so many people out there that are lazy. They'll see something and they're, oh yeah, that's my guy. And they'll stick it on their tree. Somebody copies it, it propagates, it goes out there, and it's wrong. And it's just a bad thing to throw out into the universe. So do your research, be methodical, and put the right information out there. Don't put something. And the last one that I will go to is other people's trees. I may go there to get a hint for something, but I'll always look and see what their tree looks like. If you go there and they have nothing but all of their research is from other people's trees, they don't have any actual sources, don't do it. And they may have like 3 kids with the same name, or their kids were born before their parents and stuff like that. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like, did you not notice that the child was born before the mother, or the mother was 3 when the child was, I mean, it's a mess. So don't be lazy, do your research. And then thank you for listening to me, and happy hunting.
Carrie,
Okay.
this has been wonderful. Thank you. I
know.
want to mention one more thing.
Sure.
Divorces.
Yes,
It's interesting to look up the divorces too, because you may find that, if you can't find the line, check out divorces, the divorce.
Well,
papers.
I can tell you real quick. I've got one person on my tree. She's my great-great-grandmother. I found that she got married the first time. She said she was 16. She was actually 13. She lied. I have, for her first marriage, I have a marriage certificate. I have a newspaper announcement. I've got all kinds of stuff. So I know she married this guy. Then I have another marriage for her a few years later, marriage certificate, marriage announcements in the paper, everything. No divorce that I can find. And in between those, she supposedly married my great-great-great-grandfather, Michael Barnes, the Barnes line. And they had my great-great-grandmother, Naomi. I can't find any marriage record for them, any marriage announcement, nothing. And I find no divorce records for the other 2 guys. So you got to play detective and figure these things out. But a lot of times back then,
Wasn't always done.
wasn't always done. So
Also,
sometimes,
Yeah, I also found my aunt and uncle, when I found their graves, they weren't buried together. And I questioned my family, thinking, were they still married? Because they had, when the second one died, because was for different reasons, you wonder whether something had happened. Well, you know what happened? She died, and they didn't bother to get a second grave plot, and there wasn't any place next to him, so they had to be
sometimes
buried.
that's what happens.
It's like a very simple reason.
Yep. We found, Naomi
Carrie,
is, yeah. Yes,
I'm gonna have to go, but
yeah, it's already 9, so.
yeah, this has been absolutely wonderful. I will talk to you, if not tomorrow or the next day. We will get together and send out an email and figure
Okay.
out a time. to set
Before
up
you
this
go,
sit.
I'm gonna make you the host again.
Okay,
Okay, so now I'm hoping that I can get to the chat.
Oh, okay.
Because I want to put this link in the chat. And I had it earlier, so I know it's here. I want to, I have it sitting here ready to go and everything. I threw everything in the Dropbox, so I'd have it
I
tonight.
still have I can still, the chat's, my chat's in the bottom.
I don't know why I don't have any of my, well, that just,
Terry, you will figure it out.
I will figure it out, but that is
Yep.
so annoying.
And we'll get it to everybody.
Yeah. All right. Well, unless there's any other questions, it is late. And I appreciate you guys hanging with me for twice as long as we were probably supposed to talk, but
You know
My
what?
pleasure.
It's been so interesting, and thank you for sharing your family with us and your
Oh, I'm
family
glad to.
history. And have a wonderful new year to everyone, and be safe and stay well. Thanks
Okay, you
again,
too.
Carrie.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carrie. This was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I learned so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.